Welcome to Clarity, a podcast powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. I'm Zach Warren, the Institute's Technology and Innovation Insights lead. In each episode, we dive deep into a single question from decision makers and thought leaders from legal, corporate, tax accounting and audit, and government communities. In today's episode, we discuss the big question: what is the real-world impact of suspicious activity reports today? For those not in the financial regulation know, a suspicious activity report, or SAR, is a report filed by financial institutions to notify the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, FinCEN, of suspected money laundering, terrorist financing, or other illegal activities. In recent times, SAR filings are hitting record highs, and in the age of digital banking and crypto complexity, they matter now more than ever. These filings are no simple process, but a few practical techniques can help Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering officers with writing SAR narratives that actually help law enforcement. Today, TRI's Rabia Butler sits down with Ruth Kruse, BSA officer at Southwest Heritage Bank, to give some actionable insights into suspicious activity reports today and explore why, when it comes to SAR filings, quality trumps quantity.
Hi, I'm Rabia Butler, here to attempt to cut through the noise and bring essential insights. And today, we look into the world of compliance. In today's financial landscape, the Humble Suspicious Activity Report, or SAR, plays a more critical role than ever before. It's not just a document, it's a vital piece of intelligence in the fight against financial crime. But in an era where SAR volumes are soaring to unprecedented levels, and digital banking and cryptocurrencies are rewriting the rules of engagement, the question becomes, how do we ensure that these reports are truly making an impact? That's precisely why we're asking the big question: why in the world of SARS, quality trumps quantity, and we're looking beyond the numbers. We're incredibly fortunate to have a seasoned BSA AML officer to join us and help us unpack the real world implication of SARS. Today, we welcome Ruth Kruse. We'll explore why volumes are at high records, how the digital revolution is reshaping red flags, and what emerging patterns institutions are absolutely need to watch and be watching. Building on an important discussion sparked at this year's ACAMS conference, particularly the shift towards outcome based SAR reporting, we will look at the paradigm and what it means for the triggers, how to strike a crucial balance between rule based alerts and investigative judgment, and how balance can be shifted in this new outcomes focused approach. Here's hoping you'll gain some practical techniques for crafting appropriate SAR narratives and truly empower law enforcement to become and discover how new technologies, data sharing, and cross industry collaboration are evaluating and elevating both the quality and impact of SARs. Hopefully, you're a compliance professional or a financial institution leader, or even keen to understand the evolving fight against financial crime. This episode is packed with some actionable insights, and you can apply these on day one. So let's get started. Welcome, Ruth.
Thanks for having me.
And do you want to give us a little bit more of your background?
Of course, I've been in banking for over 20 years, in the compliance sector for over a decade. I currently work for a commercial bank in Arizona that has branches in New Mexico. I'm the BSA officer there, and I'm highly involved in education and resources for our customers, and obviously platforms like this. I enjoy outreach, talking to people, and let's get down into the dirty details.
So we all know that a suspicious activity report or SAR is important. It's a regulatory requirement. We know the basics. But from those basics, what is the importance of filing an appropriate suspicious activity report?
We have to get the information to law enforcement. That's really the bottom line of a SAR is we have information that's important for a law enforcement person. And it's going to be different depending on what department they're in. Homeland Security is going to look at things differently than IRSCI, but they are our customers. They're the people we are writing these SARs for.
So, as we're looking at SARS, I've noticed that they're a particular high volume. We did a report a couple years back showing that it was a record breaking year in 2023 and that 2024 was pretty close behind. So I know there's a lot of money mules and there's a lot of check fraud. But why do you think these SAR volumes are at record high? Is it opportunistic or is there something else behind it?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think we are seeing more information because we're using our data better. We're able to actually dig in and see it. But there's also the flip side where regulators are expecting us to file these SARs. They're saying, no, there's this activity, you need to file on it, even though the financial institution might not agree with that. We don't have enough information to file on. This would not be useful. But because it is suspicious in the eyes of our regulators, we need to submit a filing.
So with that being the case, how are SAR filings evolving with digital banking and cryptocurrency and other emerging trends over the last 6 months? And what are the things that institutions should really monitor?
Yeah. So cryptocurrency used to be a bad word, right? It used to be every time somebody saw it, they would file a SAR. But now that we're seeing it integrated into real life, you have to make a determination on whether it is criminal activity or if it's just somebody investing in it. So you have to look into where it's going. Does this make sense? Is it a crypto ATM or is it with a legitimate person like Kraken? And I think that's going to lead to a lot more SARs for cryptocurrency as we start to understand it better. And we're also going to be able to identify, the national priorities. Yeah, we talked about this a little earlier with the government's trying to focus more on the cartels and drug trafficking. And that's going to go in the direction of the focus. We're going to look more at bulk cash shipments and the integrated movement across borders.
And I know we're typically looking for a SAR as the bright line for me when I think of a SAR, I think of $10,000 or more. Like that just for me is bright line, this is what we need. What are the other kind of bright line buzzword for SARs that we should be looking at?
So it's not just about the amount of money. It's about, is this an elder exploitation case? Yeah, that was a big one. The mail theft. Yeah, Vincent even issued an advisory over that. That's another big buzzword. I think that's one of the reasons you started seeing more SARs on check fraud, actually, is because Vincent released the advisory and said, hey, we want to know about this. And financial institutions responded, which is good to see. But once again, you have to make sure you're sending out the right information. Do you have enough information? Just because it was check mail fraud, do we know who did it? Do we know where the check was cashed? Those sorts of things that law enforcement can then take and use.
So here is the big question. John Hurley, the Undersecretary of Treasury and Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, what a mouthful, made some comments at ACAMS. And at the conference, he referenced a shift change from the front end to a more outcome based SAR filing system. And that seems like a huge shift. I guess first, what does that shift mean?
So I listened to the speech a few times just because there's so many nuances to what he said. But I think the biggest shift is understanding that law enforcement are our customers. And we want to make sure that what we're sending them, kind of like you poked on earlier, is quality, not just quantity. What are we saying? How are we saying it? And does it make sense when it's being read on the other side?
And so, what's the importance of this change?
It's going to be a huge shift in the banks and credit unions because when they're going to go file a SAR, it's not, oh my gosh, we have to file on everything. It's going to be, wait, do we have enough information to file on? Do we have the right information? Are we passing this along? Do we have the knowledge base? Are we teaching our analysts how to write narratives so that law enforcement can understand them? I think it's going to be a big educational shift as well as regulation shift in the branches. Hopefully, regulators will hopefully look at SARs and go, okay, this is what you're filing on, not why didn't you file on this activity.
Now, I'm kind of going a little bit down a rabbit hole, something that I found super interesting. I was talking to a law enforcement officer, and they mentioned that photos, snapshots of checks, and things like that are super important in SARS. Do you think that that kind of contributes to the outcome-based quality over quantity paradigm?
I do. And I think that's something that Vincent should look at doing is adding an ability in your SAR filings to put in images of checks. So let law enforcement doesn't have to request those after the fact. You can just copy and paste a screenshot in and it'll be right there for them in the narrative. And that way they can see it.
Okay. So, what do you think today, with this new paradigm shift, are the buzzwords or triggers for a SAR?
I think it's going to be, is this a quality SAR? I think quality is going to be a buzzword. Is this useful? That's going to be another one because I heard John Hurley say that word a lot. Is this useful? Think about your customers. Think about who's going to read this. And so quality, useful, customer. Those are going to be,
And so, would you agree it's kind of a shift not only in quality, but in addition to them being a customer, looking at it as a partnership and how to be more symbiotic?
yeah, I agree. And we've started to see that shift, I would say, just in the last 5 years, really, of the partnership between law enforcement and financial institutions. I think we're really going to start to embrace that even more now, which I applaud. I think that's a great effort.
So, with this new paradigm, the next question is, how do we balance this rule based alerts with simple investigative judgment?
It's That's a tricky question. You need to make sure you have the right information. So let's say you get an alert that you're looking at and the customer is structuring transactions. Well, does that mean they're actually doing something they're not supposed to be doing? Or are they just doing their normal business activity? It just happens to be actual structuring. So teaching the analyst, you have to dig deeper, you have to ask questions, you can't just look at the data, talk to the businesses, see what they're actually doing, what they're using the money for.
And so essentially, what we're saying is the SAR you filed yesterday is important, but the SAR you filed tomorrow needs to be more detailed and is going to be essentially more important to the customer, to the partner, to the future.
Exactly. Yes.
How do you properly craft a SAR narrative that's actually useful to law enforcement? What specifics do we need to give them?
So it's always comes down to the who, what, when, where, why, how. But it goes beyond that. You touch on those, you have to put it together cohesively. You can't just say John Doe went into the store, he purchased this and he left, and that was suspicious. That doesn't help. You have to build the story. You have to tell us who this person is. Who is he? Does he own a business? Does he work for IBM? Is he retired? And then build off of that and let law enforcement know this is our normal and then this is why it's not normal.
Now, when we say not normal, I know we have like, oh, a cryptocurrency machine, or oh, this is an MSB that only cashes checks that are $9,992. Like, what else are we looking at as abnormal?
You look for a housewife who doesn't have an occupation but cashes checks on a regular basis that are always under the threshold. And usually it's going to be way under the threshold, $5,000 or less, but it adds up over time. Oh, or a business that comes in and their payroll doesn't come out of their account. So, they have employees. Why aren't they paying their payroll out of their account? It's going to be more nuanced. It's going to be looking into the finer details and adding up over a course of time, not just one or two transactions here or there.
And do you think there's additional pressure that's being put on the investigator, not just externally, but internally from the banks or the financial institutions to do a better job than what they've been doing?
I haven't seen that yet, but I hope it'll come. I hope banks will embrace this and go, it's not about how many SARs we put out every day. It's about, are we putting out the right ones?
And from a time perspective, because I know that's important, do you think it'll increase the amount of time that it takes to file a SAR, making sure that it's a good SAR, or are we looking at kind of the same amount of time?
It might at first. Analysts might struggle a little bit at first to get the nuances down, get the writing style down. But I believe that if you get into a pattern of doing it on a regular basis, it'll go back to our normal time frame or expected, hour or 2 hours for whatever.
And do you see or foresee training in the future that'll make this like a breeze to be done?
I hope so. That's my, and I hope I'm there to help people do it. I want to see more education on professional writing and how to communicate effectively. I think that'd be really useful in our field.
And how can we communicate these things more effectively?
Use better language, know what the right language to use. Don't use acronyms or jargon. Tell it straight. Don't put your own personal opinion into it, just the facts, ma'am. I love that saying because it's true with SARs.
So, did anything else in John Hurley's commentary stand out to you?
So I wrote one down. It was, what is valuable and what is a waste of time? That really stood out because it makes you think once again, is this worthwhile? I have limited time in my day to work through these things. Is it worth it? Is this really suspicious?
I think that he put out so much. I remember being kind of in awe of this really intense conversation that he had. So, is there anything else that jumps out at you?
I took 3 pages of notes, to be honest with you. I think the other one that stood out was objective measures of output. I really like how he said, FinCEN and regulators need to be able to have something objective to measure SARs against. Um, and what that means, he kind of left that open ended, which I also liked. He kind of sent a shot out to the audience, like, what do you think this means? What would be an objectable measure for a program? And I think that's a good question. I don't have the answer yet, but I think that's something that people should think about.
I know you don't have the answer, but would you think that the objective measure would be the number of cases investigated, or even even the things that are coming back from it?
Yeah, so I think it would be on the law enforcement side. It would be, they're getting this many SARs, they're pulling out this many from the database, and then how many originated in a case, how many originated in a trial, how many originated in actually somebody being, um, I'm blanking on the word, the prosecution was successful. The person went to jail, there was a fine. I think those would be measurable.
So it seems to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, that we now have to have more communication about what happens after we file the SAR. We're not just filing them and throwing them into the void that is this website. We're finding out, hey, 50% of your SARs were actionable, or only 20 were actionable. Maybe you need to revise your process.
Yeah. And even if they don't do it by bank, they might do it by region. Even that would be helpful. Arizona filed this many SARs, and then do the process down that way.
Okay. And so, as we're kind of wrapping up, how do you think technology and collaboration can change the impact of the quality of SARs that can be filed?
It's a tricky slope with AI. I think if you have them generate useful templates that analysts could then build off of, that's my vision of what an AI would be useful for a SAR narrative. The other ways it would be useful would be prior to the SAR narrative, collating the data for us, saying this alert needs priority over this alert because of these criteria, or we move this one straight to case because there's something going on. That's where AI really shines, I think.
So, I know a lot of people like to use AI to I guess, kind of shifting. When I talk to courts, they talk about AI being a thought partner, and they shift it to the thought partner that allows you to analyze these huge chunks of data. Is that kind of what we're looking for? That kind of thought partner that can look at these huge chunks of data and drill it down for us?
Correct. I like the use of thought partner. That's a good way of putting it. It is. It's not taking over your thinking. It's just kind of putting it into buckets that are easier for you to look at.
And do you think that we could valuably use AI as a tool that would help us improve writing or writing options?
I think that's possible. That's a little trickier. I don't know if AI is quite up to it yet. But I'm hopeful in the future, like I said, building a good template that maybe takes your banks. I was actually speaking to a vendor yesterday, and you can give them templates of SARs that you've written, and then the AI uses that to create templates for your bank to use going forward. So it is really cool. I'm like, that's more companies need to do that. That's awesome. Because then it builds off the language that your institution uses. I think that's where we should use AI, not to do our thinking for us, but to take our thinking and then make it so we can keep using it down the line.
I think that also does wonders when we're talking about training, when we're talking about the generational shift, creating these kind of ready, I don't want to say Gen Zer specifically, but people who are entering into this space and making them more ready and more productive and hitting the ground running. I think that's a new ball game.
It is. And to be able to, so I've just hired 2 new analysts over the last year, so I can speak to training very quickly. And I had to do a lot of quality control when they first started writing. And even though they had done the job before, I kind of hold them to a higher standard. And I was like, no, that's not good enough. You need to do this again. Nope, that's still not good enough. You need to do it again. And like you said, if I had an AI that could kind of give them a groundwork, that would save a lot of time.
Definitely. So as we're coming to the end, I always give people this crystal ball and kind of say, if you looked into this ball and saw 12, 18 months down the road, after everybody has had time to digest the comments from ACAMs and looked at what was coming next, what do you see as far as regulatory and as far as filings?
My hope is that the government won't just stick their toes in the mud and say, no, we don't want to do this. What we're doing right now is fine. And they actually make progress. They actually go in and change the exam manual. When they come in and do exams, they don't just criticize the program, because you had 10 cases, why didn't they go to SAR? Let's actually have a discussion about what are you writing about? Let's actually read through these together, and then we can give you guidance on how to make them better. That would be a more useful exam in my mind. So that's my hope.
I'm hoping that in the next 12 months we see a shift in just the standards and the regulations to impact this outcome based thinking so that we're emphasizing the quality over the quantity. So I'm hoping honestly that we don't have another record year, that that number starts to go down and we start to kind of very intensely see what's happening on the other side and make it more useful.
I like that. Once again, the buzzword quality. Let's make that. Yeah.
So with that, do you have any final words for us?
I think if people hadn't heard John Hurley's speech, please go out and listen to it. It's on YouTube. It is fantastic. It's short, it's to the point, and he did a great job summing up the issues that he saw and, the little tidbits that hopefully we'll see in the future to fix it.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I want to thank our listeners for kind of bearing with us. I know SARs are a very intense topic right now, but I hope that you learned something about the outcome based controls and working with quality over quantity.
I'd like to thank Ruth and Rabia for your insights. As they both noted, the nature of the SAR filing is evolving, both with the rise of outcome-based filings and the impact that technology will make on the future. And I have a strong suspicion that we have not seen the end of this change, as new technologies and bad actors continue to make suspicious activity reports as important as ever moving into the future. Thank you as always for joining us for Clarity, powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. You can follow or subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to share with your colleagues and leave a 5-star review. For more data-driven analysis of today's professional services market and in-depth conversations with industry thought leaders, please visit us online at thomsonreuters.com/institute and follow us on LinkedIn under the Thomson Reuters Institute. Clarity is a production of Thomson Reuters, copyright Thomson Reuters 2025.